What's up guys, welcome back. This is anime fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was Abused and Was the Reincarnation of Guts Berserk Part 2. Now, let's begin. The voyage back to Konoha was not a triumphant march. It was a procession of the scarred and tired. Tsunade marched at the head, her expression grim and exhausted. Jiraiya stood beside her, keeping a watchful eye on the horizon and his hand firmly gripping his scrolls. The guy at the back, however, drew the most silence. Naruto Uzumaki moved with a heavy, mechanical gait. His black cloak was barely more than burned ribbons. The big iron slab on his back, the weapon that had parried the Kusanagi and held back the Shukaku, was not the same. A jagged, hairline fracture now went down the center of the blade to the hilt. It buzzed at a dissonant, fading pitch. "It's screaming," Naruto mumbled, his voice barely heard above the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. "The sword?" Jiraiya inquired, looking back. "The iron," Naruto responded, his gray-blue eyes riveted on the crack. "It wasn't made for the things I'm putting it through. It's just a heap of raw metal trying to hold back a god. It's tired." When the gates of Konoha emerged from the mist, there were no cheers. The villagers stood in the streets, their eyes wide with a mix of optimism for their new Hokage and primitive fear for the kid following her. They remembered the forest of death. They recalled the purple lighting and the boom that sounded like the end of the world. To them, Naruto was the monster who had survived the snake, not the boy who brought back the medic nin. Naruto ignored them. He felt the brand on his neck pulse, a cold, regular pulsing that indicated lingering hostility in the air. "Naruto-kun." Hinata rushed through the crowd, ignoring the Hyuga elders' condemning looks. She had little regard for decency. She noticed Naruto leaning on the hilt of his blade, his knuckles white from the strain of standing upright. She approached him just as he stumbled. She did not try to catch his weight. Instead, she became his anchor. She slid her shoulder beneath his arm, her petite form straining against the sheer bulk of his biceps. "You're home," she said, her purple eyes looking for the lad who was still inside. "I'm back," Naruto said raspily. He gazed at her, and for a brief moment, the gray in his eyes softened. The iron, it held Hinata. For now. Temari watched the encounter from across the plaza. She stood with the sand delegation, her fan tightly strapped. She noticed how the Hyuga girl held him, and she felt a sharp, metallic twinge of envy, not for the affection, but for the proximity to the storm. She knew Naruto was a ticking time bomb, and she wanted to be present when he eventually burst. Tsunade spent his first hour as Hokage in the High Council chamber. Two seniors, Kaharu and Homura, sat like weathered statues, their gaze fixated on the battle reports from Tanzaku quarters. "You allow this boy to walk freely?" Homura inquired, his voice faint and dry. "The report says he manifested a dark armor. An energy that is neither the Nine Tails nor the Cursed Seal. It is unnatural. It's survival," Tsunade said, pounding her fist on the mahogany table. "That unnatural energy is the only reason the sand didn't level this village. He's a Jinchuriki, yes, but he's something else now. He's a soldier who has seen a war you can't even imagine. His weapon is a piece of scrap," Kaharu explained. "He carries it like a badge of defiance. We should confiscate it. Strip him of the influence of this berserker spirit." "Try it," a voice said from the doorway. The Dragon Slayer leaned against the doorframe while Naruto stood there. He did not bow. He did not show respect. He stared at the elders like they were already dead. "The iron is the only thing keeping the beast inside me from looking at you and seeing dinner," Naruto murmured, his voice low and scary. "If you want the sword, come take it. But I should warn you, the last person who tried lost his arms." Tsunade hid a smirk as the elders recoiled. "Enough. Naruto, your blade is failing. Jiraiya tells me it cracked against the Sannin." Naruto examined the fracture. "It's a blunt instrument. It can't handle the pressure of the armor. There is a legend," Tsunade continued, her tone becoming serious. "In the ruins of the land of whirlpools, your mother's homeland. Before the collapse of the Uzumaki, there was a forge built into the heart of a black rock volcano. They say a master blacksmith lived there, a man who refused to make kunai or shuriken. He only made relics for those who walked the path of the demon. An Uzumaki blacksmith, Naruto inquired, his interest piqued. His name was Daisuke Uzumaki, Jiraiya explained. But the travelers called him, the Old Man of the Mountain. He was obsessed with sealing spirits into metal. If anyone can reforge that slab of yours into a weapon that can withstand the Berserker armor, it's him. If he's even still alive. Naruto grasped the hilt of his sword. He sensed the resonance, the ghost of a guy named Godot from his previous existence. A man who saw that a sword was more than just steel. It was a testament to the man who wielded it. I'm going, Naruto said. It's a C rank mission that could easily turn into an S rank, Tsunade cautioned. The land of whirlpools is a graveyard of traps and lingering spirits. And you won't go alone. You need anchors, Tsunade said, pointing to the entrance where Hinata and Temari were waiting. Hinata, Hyuga and Temari of the Sand will accompany you. Hinata knows your chakra, she can ground you when the armor starts to bite. And Temari. Well, the Sand owes us a debt, and she's the only one who can keep up with your pace. The following morning, the trio assembled at the village gates. Despite wrapping the Dragon Slayer in new, dark leather to conceal fractures, Naruto could feel the metal seeping beneath. He gazed at Hinata, who was donning a new combat vest with determined eyes. He looked at Temari, who was inspecting the strings of her massive fan with a smirk of eagerness on her lips. The land of whirlpools, Temari murmured, glancing at Naruto. A land of ghosts and ruins. Sounds like your kind of place, Uzumaki. Naruto said, it's home, despite having never been there. He felt the brand on his neck burn with a cool, comforting fire. As they went through the hazy forests, Naruto felt the beast of darkness move in his shadow. It was not snarling, it was hungry, it wanted the genuine blade. It needed iron that would not crack. Behind them, on the Hokage memorial, the stone face of the fourth Hokage appeared to watch them. But Naruto did not look back. He was a guy moving toward his own forge, ready to be pounded into something the world would eventually fear. The sea around the land of whirlpools was not made of water, but of teeth. Massive, churning vortices of saltwater and jagged rock guarded the ruins of Uzu, powered by the remaining chakra of 1,000 broken seals. Naruto stood at the bow of a small, fortified skiff chartered from the Land of Fire's coast. He did not look at the waves. He was staring at the Dragon Slayer, which was vibrating against his back. The cracks in the iron glowed with a faint, sickening purple light, as if the weapon was attempting to bleed. The air here, it's heavy, Hinata muttered, her Byakugan activated. She could see the ocean's spiritual ley lines, which were twisted into pure hate. It's like the island is screaming. It's not the island, Naruto rasped, his voice low and mechanical, resembling the grinding of the whirlpools. It's the ghosts. They recognize the iron. Temari stood behind them, holding her fan tightly. She was accustomed to the dry, predictable heat of the desert. This wet, spiritual pressure represented a different kind of war. Tsunade said the forge is in the center of the island. If we don't find it before that slab of yours shatters, Naruto, we're not just losing a weapon. We're losing the only thing keeping that beast of yours on a leash. They landed on a beach with black sand. The city of Uzushiobikure lay in front of them, a skeletal structure of white stone and rusted metal reclaimed by the jungle. As Naruto stepped onto the main road, the brand on his neck burst in a cold, scorching fire. He dropped on one knee, the iron slab crashing into the sand with a force that felt twice as heavy as before. Naruto-kun. Hinata knelt behind him, her cooling chakra streaming into his back to protect against the evil energy. They're coming, Naruto groaned and pushed himself up. Relic. Traps sprung from collapsing structures' shadows. They were not ninjas. They were ethereal guardians, activated by the Uzumaki's legendary sealing jutsu. They held jagged blades and moved silently, terrifyingly. I'll handle the left, Temari exclaimed, whirling her fan. Wind style. Sand cloud whirlwind. A gust of wind ripped through the first line of phantom troops, but they did not collapse. They simply rebuilt, their armor snapping back in place. They aren't physical, Hinata said, her palms sparking with the iron palm resonance. They're fueled by the island's chakra. You have to hit the seals on their chest plates. Naruto did not use his sword's edge. He reached back and seized the Dragonslayer's flat blade, swinging it like a huge club. Struggler's hammer. The iron slab struck the lead specter. Even in its shattered state, the sheer weight of the heap of iron crushed the animated armor to dust. However, the impact caused the fracture in the sword to spread. A small piece of the edge broke away, striking the ground with a dull clink. "It's breaking," Tamari whispered, her eyes wide as she parried a strike from a phantom commander. "Naruto, the sword won't last another 10 minutes, then I'll use my hands," Naruto hissed. The purple aura of the berserker armor flared across his flesh. He didn't let the helm close, but his arms were wrapped in jagged, shadow iron plates. He began to move at a jerky, unnatural speed, cutting through the phantom guardians with raw, kinetic hate. They arrived at the base of the primary volcano just as the sun was setting. The heat was dry and fierce, and the air smelled of sulfur and aged coal. A forge in a large cave seems to have been carved from dragon bones. Massive bellows, powered by a sophisticated set of gears and water wheels, sent rhythmic clouds of black smoke into the air. A man sat beside the anvil. He was huge, his skin the color of tanned leather, and his hair a bright Uzumaki crimson turned white by ash. He was missing one arm and was fitted with a rudimentary but effective iron prosthetic. He did not glance up when they approached. He was hammering a blazing chunk of steel. Clang! 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 "I don't make kunai," the man responded, his voice sounding like a rockfall. "And I don't make shuriken. If you're looking for a ninja's toy, go back to the leaf." Naruto stepped forward. He unloaded the Dragonslayer and placed it on the man's workbench. The iron slab appeared pitiful in the light of the forge, broken, rusty, and dying. The blacksmith eventually looked up. He focused on the sword, then the brand on Naruto's neck, and finally the boy's gray-blue eyes. "So," the man remarked with a gloomy look on his face. "The struggler finally found his way home. Are you Daisuke Uzumaki?" Naruto inquired. The blacksmith said, "I'll fix that pile of garbage you're carrying." He lifted the Dragonslayer with one hand, despite its 200-pound weight. "But iron alone won't hold the things you're fighting. I need the blood of the demon and the will of the man. And it's going to hurt, boy. It's going to hurt more than the abuse, and more than the fox." Naruto gazed at Hinata and Tamari before returning his gaze to the blacksmith. "I've been in pain since I was born," Naruto stated. "Just make it heavy." Naruto's lungs were threatened by the heat inside the volcano's heart, which became a breathing pressure rather than a physical sense. Daisuke Uzumaki stood above the anvil, his single arm moving with a rhythmic and scary force. Daisuke instructed, "Lay your hand on the iron, boy," with a gravelly voice over the hiss of the bellows. "This isn't just a reforge. It's a marriage. If you want a blade that can kill gods, you have to give it a reason to keep breathing." Naruto went closer, his body quivering, not from fear, but from the raw, simmering rage that had turned him into a far more cynical and isolated figure than the youngster the town once knew. He stretched out to grab the rough, shattered surface of the iron slab. "Hinata, Tamari," Daisuke said. "Hold his center. If his spirit drifts too far into the cinder, he won't come back." Hinata and Tamari moved simultaneously. Hinata pushed her palms into Naruto's back, her calm chakra serving as a foundation for the wild energy that began to whirl within him. Tamari stood at his side, fan half open, ready to use her wind to extinguish the raging flames. Naruto's skin contacted the shimmering metal and the world vanished. Naruto did not end up in the sewer of his mindscape. He found himself in a world of black snow and rusting blades. There were no clear recollections of his previous existence, just a phantom agony, a deep-seated drive to endure against insurmountable odds that had been with him since birth. Before him was the beast of darkness. It was not the Nine Tails. It was a snarling, jagged wolf composed of shadows and teeth, with two horizontal slots of ominous crimson light. It sat on the throne of the fractured iron slab. "You want the true blade?" the beast asked, reverberating across Naruto's broken mind. "The true blade is made of the things you want to forget. The loneliness, the cold, the weight of every hand that ever struck you." Naruto walked towards the beast. He didn't have his sword here. He just had his hands wrapped in the bandages that Hinata had given him. I don't have to remember where this pain came from to know how to use it, Naruto remarked, his voice flat and dead raspy. The village wanted a monster. The snake wanted a vessel. But I'm just a guy who refuses to stay down, the beast lunged. Naruto didn't flee. He confronted the shadow front on, his fists glowing with a dark, purplish energy, a combination of his natural ninja powers and the struggler's unwavering determination. Naruto felt bodily impacts from the beast's attacks. In the actual world, Daisuke's hammer fell. Clang. Naruto's ribcage cracked. Clang. The reforging caused his skin to steam and expose the black lines of the cursed seal. On the anvil, the iron slab was shifting. It no longer resembled a flat, rusty rectangle. As he pounded, Daisuke directed Naruto's explosive chakra through a series of ancient Uzumaki sealing arrays cut into the anvil's surface. Naruto coughed up blood, and the metal began to suck it, turning the crimson liquid a deep, matte black as it absorbed. "He's fading," Temari said, her gaze riveted on Naruto's pale face. "The armor, it's trying to manifest." The berserker armor's jagged plates threatened Naruto's neck, yet Hinata's violet eyes shone brightly. She rested her forehead on Naruto's shoulder. "Don't go," she whispered. "Stay here, in the cold. I'll be the one to keep you warm." Her chakra's cooling resonance helped regulate his heartbeat. In his imagination, Naruto seized the beast of darkness by the throat. He did not kill it. He absorbed it. He drove the shadow back into the iron, transforming the demon's malice into the blade's sharpness. Daisuke delivered the finishing strike. "Now, wake up." Hinata and Temari were knocked back by an energy blast. The furnace was filled with thick, white steam that smelt like ozone and ancient iron. Naruto stood in the center. He was taller, his body more rugged and scarred. On his shoulder was a weapon that defied the term, sword. The enormous, pitch-black iron slab was almost as tall as him. It now had a real hilt, wrapped in rough, blackened leather. The edge was so sharp that it appeared to cut the light shining off it. It was dense and heavy, with a presence that made the volcano's air feel thin. This was the true Dragon Slayer. Daisuke wiped sweat from his brow, his single eye shining with a peculiar and terrible pride. "It's done. It's no longer just a heap of iron. It's a part of you now, boy. It'll never break as long as your will stays whole." Naruto grasped the hilt. The brand on his neck stopped burning and instead hummed with a chilly, steady force. He looked at Hinata and Temari, his cynical glare softening briefly before returning to the single wall. "We're leaving," Naruto murmured, lifting the enormous blade with one hand. "The night is coming, and I have a lot of things that need to be cut." The dark sand on the Uzumaki coast was freezing, but the air was filled with a vile, ceremonial energy. As the group approached their skiff, the brand on Naruto's neck started weeping a dark, viscous substance that sizzled on his flesh. "They're here," Naruto rasped, sliding his palm to the true Dragon Slayer's hilt. Two individuals emerged from the heavy, salty mist. One stood tall, his face disguised, his eyes emerald and calculating. The other wielded a triple-bladed scythe and had a crazy sneer. "Look at that, Kakuzu," Hidan said, his voice booming off the jagged rocks. "That's a big-ass piece of iron. I wonder if Lord Jashin would prefer a sacrifice made with such a ridiculous toy." "Quiet, Hidan," Kakuzu whispered, his gaze locked on Naruto's blade. "That blade, it's not just metal. I can smell the chakra of a dozen masters sealed inside it. It's worth more than the boy's bounty." Naruto did not wait for a religious or economic lesson. He did not use hand signals. He just stepped forward and swung. The true Dragon Slayer not only moved through the air, but tore it apart. The sheer weight and sharpness produced a vacuum, drawing black sand into a vortex. Hidan raised his scythe to parry, a sarcastic laugh escaping his lips. Crack! The triple-bladed scythe was not simply broken, but pulverized. The iron slab crashed into Hidan's chest, knocking the immortal cultist back with enough force to skip across the waters like a stone. "What the?" Kakuzu's eyes narrowed. He lurched forward, his arms separating and expanding in a mass of black threads. "That strength, it's not the fox. Hinata, Temari," Naruto said, "the one with the threads is yours. Leave the loud one to me." Hinata moved with newfound resolve. She slipped beneath Kakuzu's threads, her hands glowed with the jagged, vibrating energy of her iron palm. Tamari whirled her fan next to her, creating a localized gale that sharpened Hinata's attacks. Hidan stood up in the surf with his chest caved in and neck twisted at an awkward position. He laughed, making a wet, hacking sound, and snapped his bones back in place. "Oh, that hurt. That was delicious. Now, let me show you what real pain feels like." He produced a collapsible spear and lunged to extract a single drop of Naruto's blood for his ritual. Naruto followed the struggler's inclination. He didn't dodge like a ninja, but exchanged. He let the spear to graze his shoulder, resulting in a shallow cut, and then slammed the Dragon Slayer's point into the dirt. Eclipse wave. The ground under Hidan erupted. Because the blade was formed in the interstice of the Uzumaki volcano, it existed on both the physical and spiritual levels. It not only struck Hidan's body, but also his soul. Hidan yelled, not in pleasure, but in severe agony. "What is this? My God, Lord Jashin, why does it burn?" Quote, "Your God isn't here," Naruto muttered, his eyes going a ghastly gray. "This blade was made to kill things that shouldn't exist. You're just a ghost that hasn't realized it's dead yet." Kakuzu withdrew two of his masks as his buddy was dismantled. One unleashed a torrent of fire, the other a bolt of lightning. The combined elemental blast roared towards the trio. "Naruto-kun," Hinata exclaimed. Naruto did not glance back. He raised the Dragon Slayer, with the flat of the huge blade serving as an absolute shield. The fire and lightning swept across the black iron, yet the sword did not even heat up. It devoured the chakra, leaving the hilt's carved Uzumaki seals glowing a faint, hungry purple. Naruto felt the beast of darkness stir. The purple, jagged plates of the berserker armor appeared on his arms and torso. He lunged through the flames, a shadow beast wielding an iron slab. He not only attacked Kakuzu, but also obliterated the gap between them. With a single overhead cleave, he severed one of Kakuzu's masks. The thing inside wailed before dissipating into ash. "Enough," Kakuzu exclaimed, his threads drawing him back into the mist. "Hidan, we're leaving. This target is too volatile. We need a different strategy. I'll kill him. I'll tear his heart out." Hidan screamed, despite his torso being kept together by threads. "You'll die if you stay," Kakuzu growled, gripping Hidan's hair and jumping into the fog. "That blade, it's not just iron. It's a grave marker." The silence on the black beach was broken only by the repetitive slamming of the whirlpools. Naruto stood in the surf with the Dragon Slayer resting on his shoulder. The armor dissipated, leaving him sweating in the chilly salt air. Hidan had landed a tiny cut on his shoulder. The fox's red chakra was not effective in healing. It was closing due to the sword's chilly, black energy. Hinata approached him and inquired, "Are you okay?" She stretched out and softly touched the handle of the big sword. Naruto replied, "The sword is hungry," in a low rasp. It felt them. The Akatsuki. They aren't men. They're just masks for something else. And now, the blade knows the scent. Temari's fan collapsed as she glanced at the horizon. "We've started a war we can't finish on this island, Naruto. We need to get back to the village. Tsunade needs to know the Akatsuki are hunting in pairs." Naruto turned towards the skiff. He felt the true Dragon Slayer's weight, which would have crushed any other man, yet it seemed like the only thing holding him on the ground. "Let them come," Naruto said. "I've got plenty of room in the ground for all of them." Konoha's gates didn't feel welcoming. Naruto compared them to the bars of a cage that he has outgrown. The trio returned around lunchtime. Naruto strode in the center, the true Dragon Slayer dressed in a heavy, blood-stained canvas that did little to conceal its massive size. Each step he took made a tiny imprint in the stone path. His presence was more than just scary, it was a tangible weight, an atmospheric pressure that made the village's air feel thin and stagnant. "He's back," a voice murmured from the rooftop. It was not a cheer. It was an alert. Tsunade met them on the stairs of the Hokage Tower. Shikamaru Nara, the freshly promoted Chunin, stood beside her, his expression unusually anxious. His shadow wavered at his feet in response to the black, jagged energy emanating from Naruto. The mission was a success, Naruto said, his voice raspy like iron scraping across a whetstone. He did not provide a report. He did not bow. He only looked at Tsunade with a gloomy, lightless gaze. The blade is whole. The Akatsuki have been bled. Tsunade focused on the canvas-wrapped blade in Naruto's fresh scars. There's no time for rest, Naruto. Sasuke Uchiha left the village last night. He went to the snake. Naruto's expression did not change. He chose his cage. Why are we talking about him? He's a teammate. Shikamaru exclaimed, stepping forward despite his trepidation. He's a comrade of the Leaf. We're putting together a team to bring him back before he reaches the border. Naruto carefully moved his head towards Shikamaru. The brand on his neck throbbed. A comrade doesn't seek out the man who tried to kill his village. He's not a lost lamb, Nara. He's a dog looking for a master who will give him sharper teeth. If I go, I'm not bringing back a teammate. I'm putting down a threat. The assembly took place in the courtyard. Shikamaru, Neji, Kiba, and Choji gathered in a semicircle, watching Naruto approach. Naruto's presence altered the atmosphere. Kiba's dog, Akamaru, started howling, tucking his tail, and shaking furiously. Neji's Byakugan flared on instantly, but he winced as his veins throbbed. Naruto, in Neji's view, was no longer a human chakra system, but rather a black hole encircled in rusted chains. You look like hell, Naruto, Kiba mumbled, attempting to hide his horror with bravado. What's with the oversized hunk of metal? You think you're some kind of executioner? I think the world doesn't care about your games anymore, Inuzuka, Naruto said. He examined the group. Shikamaru says we're retrieving the Uchiha. I'm here because the snake is involved. If any of you get in my way, or if your friendship makes you hesitate when the blood starts flowing, stay behind the line. That's enough, Choji said, his typical friendliness replaced by a rare flash of fury. We're friends. We grew up together. How can you talk about Sasuke like he's just another target? Naruto unleashes the Dragon Slayer. He didn't draw it, but the sound of the 300-pound weapon striking the dirt made the ground beneath them shake. Naruto remarked, I grew up in an alleyway while you ate at your parents' tables, with a deathly calm tone. I've seen what happens when you hesitate for a friend. The monsters don't stop because you have a bond. They eat the bond and then they eat you. If you want to save him, save him. But don't expect me to play nice with a traitor. The hush that followed was complete. The Konoha 11 stared at Naruto but did not recognize the dead last Joker. They saw a man who had already been through the eclipse, living in a reality they couldn't comprehend. The departure. A house divided. Hinata approached Naruto as the squad prepared to leave. The elders stated that she was not a member of the official retrieval team, yet she did not seek permission from Shikamaru. She was dressed in new, reinforced military gear, with her hands already bandaged in steel-threaded bandages. I'm going, she announced. Shikamaru warned Hinata that they were on a high-speed pursuit. You need someone who can look at him without flinching, Hinata said, her lavender eyes fixated on Shikamaru with steely, ironclad determination. And you need someone who can ground him when the armor takes over. I'm the only one who can do that. Tamari appeared on the wall above them with her fan resting on her shoulder. The sand is officially assisting. I'm not letting the struggler go into a war zone without a proper wind at his back. Besides, I want to see if the Uchiha has any iron in him at all. The team set forth, but their formation was disrupted. Shikamaru, Neji, Kiba, and Choji dashed ahead, a group of traditional ninjas looking to help a friend. Naruto, Hinata, and Tamari walked 10 paces behind. They were the Shadow Guard, the strong hitters who were more concerned with the goal than with salvation. The smell of the cursed seal permeated the air at the Land of Fire's border. The Sound Four had set up a trap, a gigantic barrier of violet flames intended to divide the chase. Go, Naruto said, reaching for the Dragon Slayer's hilt. The fat one and the one with the multiple arms are ahead. Nara, take your team and push through. I'll clear the path. Naruto, we should stay together, Shikamaru said. Go, Naruto exclaimed. The purple aura of the berserker armor flared across his flesh. He drew the Dragon Slayer with one seamless motion. The black iron blade hummed as it slashed through the air, creating a vacuum that temporarily stifled the barrier's violet flames. Jirobo, the largest of the Sound Four, came forward and his skin turned a horrible orange as he entered the second stage of his cursed seal. You think a big sword makes you a... Naruto did not let him finish. He didn't utilize any jutsu. He used Struggler's momentum. He swung the Dragon Slayer horizontally. Jirobo raised his arms, backed with Earth-style chakra capable of stopping a landslide. Crunch. The iron slab did not stop. It cut through the Earth chakra, bone, and torso of the Sound Ninja. Jirobo did not fly back. He was just obliterated from the waist up. Naruto stood in the deluge of blood with the Dragon Slayer resting on his shoulder. He gazed at the shocked expressions on the Konoha 11. He was an obstacle, Naruto stated, his voice emotionless. Keep moving. The Uchiha is getting further away. Shikamaru examined the enemy's remnants before focusing on Naruto. He knew that the mission had altered. They were not on a rescue mission. They were following a Reaper. Shikamaru murmured, "Move out," his voice shaking. Don't look back." Hinata and Temari supported Naruto as the rest fled. The brand on Naruto's neck was bleeding, and the crimson fluid stained his collar. "The snake is waiting," Naruto whispered. "And the Uchiha is ready to be bitten. Let's go see how much he's willing to sacrifice for a little bit of power." The more they traveled into the borderlands, the more the countryside appeared to decay. The vivid green of the Land of Fire was being choked out by an unexpected development of white, jagged protrusions. They were not trees. They were bones. Giant, rib-like things protruding from the ground, smelled of calcium and ancient, crystallized wrath. Hinata scanned the horizon with her Byakugan, noting that Shikamaru and the others had remained behind. Her speech remained firm, but her eyes reflected the horror she saw in the distance. Neji Nisan is fighting the one with the webs. Choji is. He's pushed himself past his limit. They're fighting for a ghost, Naruto said. He did not slow down. The true Dragon Slayer was a dark silhouette against the gray sky, his weight unbound by the force of his stride. "I told them, if you stay in the past, you die there." Temari jumped over a jagged bone spike, using her fan to create a cushion of air. "You're a cold bastard, Uzumaki. But you're right, we're losing time. The Uchiha is almost at the border." A abrupt, piercing pressure surged through the air. A man emerged from the heart of a clearing in the white bone forest. He was pallid, with ghostly silver hair and 2 red spots on his forehead. He moved with a sickening, fluid elegance, like a dying man held together by pure, obsessive devotion. "I am Kimimaro," the man introduced himself. His speech sounded like dry leaves skittering over a tombstone. "Lord Orochimaru has no further use for the weaklings behind me. But you, the one who carries the iron. You are an anomaly. A stain on the master's canvas." Naruto paused. He did not take a stance. He allowed the Dragon Slayer's point to rest in the dirt, carving a line into the bone-choked earth. "I've seen your kind before," Naruto murmured, his gray eyes locking upon Kimimaro. "The loyal dog. The one who thinks his life only has meaning because someone else told him so. You're not a warrior. You're just a tool that's about to break." Kimimaro's expression remained unchanged as a rib bone slid from his chest, forming a serrated sword in his grasp. "Dance of the Willow." He moved. It wasn't about speed, but rather a fatal rhythm. Kimimaro swirled in the air, his bone blades humming. He aimed for the crevices in Naruto's ragged robe, pinpointing arteries and joints with surgical accuracy. Naruto did not parry with finesse. He used the Dragon Slayer in a vertical overhead cleave. Crack. The impact between iron and bone created a shockwave that smashed the surrounding bone spikes into dust. Kimimaro's bone blade was reinforced with chakra, but the blow pushed him to his knees. "You're heavy," Kimimaro commented, blood streaming from his mouth and internal organs recoiling from the vibration. "I'm the weight of everyone who died so I could stand here," Naruto said. Kimimaro pulled back, his skin darkening to a mottled gray as he began the first step of his cursed seal. Dance of the Clematis. Vine. His spine became a giant spiked whip, wrapping around Naruto's arm and the Dragon Slayer's hilt. The bone teeth dug into Naruto's flesh and drew blood. "Got you." Kimimaro muttered. No, Naruto snarled out. The brand around his neck flashed. It didn't only cover his skin. It went down his arm and into the bone whip itself. The shadow energy began to erode the bone, reducing the white calcium to brittle ash. Naruto tugged the whip, dragging the dying Kimimaro towards him. He didn't use his sword. He used his free hand, and his fingers transformed into sharp, shadow iron claws. Iron palm. Grave soil. He rammed his palm into Kimimaro's chest. The Shikatsunyaku, the ultimate defense, met its counterpart in the struggler's raw, unpolished spite. Kimimaro recoiled, shivering. He realized he was dying. His lungs were weakening, and his heart was stuttering. But his loyalty was unwavering. For Lord Orochimaru. Kimimaro entered stage 2. He transformed into a prehistoric beast, a dinosaur of bone and anger. He slapped his palms on the ground. Dance of the seedling fern. A forest of thousands of bone blades sprang from the earth, standing 20 feet tall and impaling everything in sight. Hinata, Temari, up, Naruto yelled. Temari grabbed Hinata and used her fan to create an updraft, lifting them over the swelling tide of bones. Naruto, however, remained on the ground. He let the bone spikes puncture his robe and skin. He didn't care. The armor was taking over, and the wolf helm snapped shut. He transformed into a swirl of black iron, spinning through the jungle of bone like a whirlwind in a graveyard. He reached Kimimaro in the center. The dragon slayer hummed, the Uzumaki seals on the hilt sucking blood from the battlefield. Go to sleep, the armored Naruto yelled. He swung the blade horizontally, filled with rage against the masters, who exploited youngsters as weapons. The black iron blade sliced through Kimimaro's ultimate bone shield, his stage 2 hide, and the very heart of his essence. Kimimaro fell. As he disintegrated into dust, he gazed up at the armored behemoth looming over him. For a little moment, he did not spot a ninja. He saw a guy who was truly free, fighting not for a master, but for the right to live. Kimimaro muttered, "Beautiful," before succumbing to the sickness and iron. Naruto stood in the heart of the bone wasteland, his armor retreating and leaving him gasping for oxygen. His body was covered in puncture wounds, but the dark energy from the blade was already cauterizing them. Hinata and Temari landed beside him. Hinata rushed to his side, her hands shining as she supported his cracked ribs. "He's almost there," Hinata replied, pointing toward the waterfall in the distance. "Sasuke. He's reached the valley of the end." Naruto gazed at the dragon slayer. The sword was stained with the white dust from Kimimaro's bones. "The snake is waiting on the other side," Naruto stated. "Let's go finish this. I want to see if the Uchiha's destiny can handle the weight of my reality." They ran toward the sound of the booming waves. The climactic battle of the arc was approaching, and Naruto Uzumaki was not holding back. The Valley of the End was a cathedral of thunder and spray. The great waterfall raged like a wounded beast, pouring a constant mist over the massive statues of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju. Sasuke stood on Madara's head with his back to the horizon. His skin was the color of bruised charcoal, and the wing-like hands of his stage 2 cursed seal twitched with demonic force. His eyes, black sclera with flaming crimson pupils, were riveted on the wooded trail. Then, the trees separated. Naruto approached the leader of Hashirama. He did not appear to be a hero coming to save a friend. He seemed like an omen. The true dragon slayer was unsheathed, and the black iron absorbed the mist, giving the blade the appearance of a hole in reality. "You're late, loser," Sasuke said in a raspy voice laced with Orochimaru's anger. "But I suppose it doesn't matter. You've come just in time to see me leave this pathetic cage behind." "You're not leaving a cage, Sasuke," Naruto stated, his voice cold and mechanical, cutting through the thunder of the waterfall. "You're just trading a small one for a deep one. You think that snake mark makes you strong. It just makes you a leash holder for a coward." Sasuke laughed wildly. "Strong? Look at me, I can feel the world crawling under my skin. I have the power to kill him now. Itachi. And you. I'll start by erasing the one thing that still thinks it can look down on me." Sasuke lunged. He did not use kunai. He moved with the power of his wings, becoming a dark blur. His fist, bolstered by the cursed seal, smashed into the Dragon Slayer's flat. Boom! The shockwave cleared the mist for 100 yards. Naruto didn't move. He clutched the 300-pound sword in one hand and secured his feet into the statue's headstone. Is that it? Naruto inquired. He swung the sword horizontally. Sasuke nearly avoided the strike, the wind creating a deep furrow in the stone behind him. Sasuke emerged in the air, his palm emitting a dark, violet-black lightning. Chidori lament. Naruto reached deep within himself. He did not call for the fox. He summoned the beast. The berserker armor cemented, rather than simply flickering. The wolf helm snapped shut, encasing Naruto in jagged shadow iron plates. He leapt into the air, confronting the Chidori head-on. The collision caused blindness. The Chidori's dark lightning clashed with the armor's light-eating aura. For a minute, they were caught in the waterfall's spray, a fallen angel and a black-armored demon. "Why won't you fall?" Sasuke yelled, as lightning scorched the armor's surface. "Because I have nowhere else to go," the armored Naruto screamed. Naruto seized Sasuke's wing hand with his shadow iron claw. He didn't utilize any jutsu. He applied pure, unadulterated torque. He twisted in midair and slammed Sasuke into the water with the force of a falling meteor. The hit created a 50-foot high water geyser. Naruto's hefty boots caused tremors when he landed on the surface of the sea. Sasuke emerged from the depths, his cursed seal flaring as he pushed his body to its limit. "I'll kill you," Sasuke screamed. "I'll sever the bond." That's what he said. "To get the Mangekyo, I have to kill my closest friend." Naruto paused. He peered at the terrified Uchiha through the crimson slots in his helmet. "Friend." Naruto's words echoed like grinding stones. "You think we are friends? I am the one who ate in the dirt while you brooded on a throne of tragedy. I am the one who struggled to stay alive while you struggled to be noticed. We are not friends, Sasuke. We are just two ghosts sharing the same graveyard." Naruto hoisted the Dragon Slayer above his head. The Uzumaki seals on the hilt started to shine in a deep, throbbing violet. The water surrounding him began to boil in response to the intensity of his intent. Sasuke focused all of his chakra into a gigantic Chidori. He pushed himself forward, his wings shredding into the air. Naruto swung the Dragon Slayer downward, cleaving vertically. The black iron met the black lightning. The valley of the end moaned. The monuments of the founders started to break. The water was completely displaced, showing the jagged stone floor of the riverbed. During the explosion, the Dragon Slayer ripped through the Chidori. It did not cease. It slashed through Sasuke's left wing hand, shoulder, and smashed into the ground beside him, breaking his internal chakra network. The armor receded. Naruto stood over the fallen Uchiha, struggling for breath. His body was covered with burns and blood, yet he remained standing. As Sasuke lay in the mud, his stage 2 form faded away, leaving him pale and damaged. He gazed up at Naruto, and for the first time, the lunacy vanished. There was only fear, a bleak, crushing reality. You would have killed me," Sasuke muttered. "I told you," Naruto said, wiping the blood from his chin. "I'm not a savior. I'm a grave marker." The choice Hinata and Temari landed on the riverbed with pallid faces. They examined the devastation before turning their attention to the two lads. "It's over," Hinata whispered, quivering as she hurried to Naruto's side, her hands blazing to repair his wounds. Naruto peered across the border to the forest. He spotted a shadow, Orochimaru's scouts, waiting. Naruto instructed Hinata and Temari to take him back to the village. "What?" Temari inquired. "What about you?" Naruto lifted the Dragon Slayer over his shoulder. He didn't look back at Konoha. He glanced down the dark way ahead. "The snake is still out there. The men in the red clouds are still out there. If I go back now, I'm just a weapon for the elders to lock away. I'm going to find the source. I'm going to find the one who's pulling the strings." "Naruto-kun, no," Hinata wailed, clutching his cloak. "You can't go alone." Naruto halted. He stared at Hinata and then at Temari. "I'm not going alone," he said, his voice lowering slightly. "I'm going where the struggle is. If you want to follow, the trail will be marked in blood. Don't let the village change you." Naruto stepped into the darkness of the borderlands, his black cloak billowing like a shroud. He left Uchiha, the village, and his upbringing behind. The struggler has finally left the map. The land of rain was characterized by continuous rainfall. It was a vertical maze of steel pipes, neon lights, and industrial rot, the perfect sanctuary for the god of this world, and the ideal hunting ground for a ghost. The bar, frequented by Rouge Nin and black market organ harvesters, smelled of wet wool and cheap sake. The talk ended as soon as the door creaked open. A man entered. He was tall, with a wider build and more muscle than any young person should have. He was dressed in a ragged, floor-length black cloak that appeared to absorb the weak light. On his back sat a big object wrapped in heavy, oil-stained bandages, but its silhouette, a colossal, rectangular slab, was unmistakable. He sat near the end of the bar. He did not order a drink. He just placed a blood-stained Akatsuki ring on the countertop. Information, the man said raspily. His voice was no longer a boy's, but a low, vibrating growl that sounded like stones grinding in a deep hollow. Who are you? The bartender asked, his gaze drawn to the ring. That belongs to one of the immortals. The traveler turned his head slightly. A solitary blue eye, chilly and lightless like a winter sea, peeked over his thick bangs. The other side of his face was shadowed, but a faint, jagged line of a scar ran down his jaw. I'm the guy they tell their god about, Naruto stated. Naruto spent 2.5 years living in the interstice, a place between shinobi settlements and hidden demon worlds. He hadn't been training in the traditional sense, he had simply been existing. His body was a representation of the conflicts he fought in. His right arm was now partially encased in a blackened, prosthetic-like armor, a gift from the old Uzumaki blacksmith, to withstand the true Dragon Slayer's recoil. Suddenly, the tavern doors were kicked open. A group of Omegakure ninjas, led by a man with a jagged scar on his nose, stormed in. We tracked the chakra signature. The leader exclaimed. There, the one in the black cloak. By order of Lord Pain, you are to be. Naruto did not let him finish. He did not stand up. He merely leaned back and reached for the hilt above his shoulder. The true Dragon Slayer unwrapped itself quickly and explosively. The sound wasn't of a sword being drawn, but of a mountain splitting. The big iron slab reflected the light of the tavern's flickering lamps, its edge a menacing matte black. Slayer's stroke. Iron Rain. Rather than aiming for a kill, Naruto focused on creating distance. The enormous air pressure of the 400-pound blade struck the squad like a physical wall. The first 3 ninjas were smashed into the floors, their ribs cracking before the metal hit them. Naruto stood with the blade resting comfortably on his armored shoulder. He stared at the surviving. He did not appear angry. He seemed bored. Go tell your god that the struggler is back, Naruto urged. And tell him I'm coming for the rest of his rings. 2 ladies guarded a small outpost on the boundary of the lands of fire and wind. Hinata Hyuga sat on a rock, meticulously sharpening steel-threaded needles. Her hair was longer and wrapped back into a high, functional ponytail. Her eyes, while still lavender, acquired a hardness that earned her the nickname, the Iron Maiden of the Leaf, in the bingo book. She'd spent the last 2 years transforming the Hyuga style into something visceral and lethal, a style fit for standing beside a demon. Tamari used her fan to investigate the wind currents nearby. She appeared older, her regal sand background tempered by the harshness of the frontier. The scouts say there was a massacre in a rain tavern, Tamari stated, her voice strained. A man with a black slab erased a squad of AIM's elite in 5 seconds. Hinata's hand paused. A little, rare smile crossed her lips, one that never reached her eyes. He's close. He's late, Tamari responded, gripping her fan tighter. 2.5 years of silence. I should kill him the moment I see him. Cue up. The voice drifted through the branches. The 2 women rose, guns at the ready. Naruto appeared, materializing from the haze. His eyes roamed over them, pausing on Hinata's hands and Tamari's fan. No embrace was forthcoming. He never mentioned missing them. The Akatsuki are on the move, Naruto stated, his tone even. The 2 tails is gone. The 1 tails is their next target. Tamari's complexion drained of color. Gaara. I'm heading to the sand, Naruto announced, hefting the Dragon Slayer. Not for the community, mind you. It's for the debt. Are you in, or are you still following the Leaf's lead? Hinata approached him. She remained unperturbed by the oppressive, shadowy presence of the Beast of Darkness, a weight that had become a permanent fixture, almost a part of him. Her fingers brushed the frigid metal of his artificial arm. I haven't played by the rules since you vanished, Naruto-kun, she murmured. Temari moved to his flank, her fan snapping open with a sharp sound. The sand won't know what slammed into them. Come on, let's go get my brother. I don't know what to do. The three of them took off, racing across the desert. Naruto's movements were now marked by a chilling precision. He didn't bother with the body flicker technique. Instead, he sprinted, his form cutting through the air with a mass that seemed to disregard the wind's pushback. The brand on Naruto's neck pulsed, a faint, steady crimson, behind them. Naruto, Temari replied, her gaze fixed on the spot. The response is underway. They're already there, Naruto muttered, his gaze locked on the distant outline of Suna's great sand shield. The artist and the puppet master. Deidara and Sasori. Naruto's hand found the leather-wrapped hilt of his sword. The fox and the beast, those twin shadows, began to writhe within him, their individual resentments coalescing into a singular, ironclad core of animosity. I hope they brought more than just clay and wood, Naruto grumbled under his breath. The Dragon Slayer's appetite was insatiable. The sky over Sunagakure blazed, a riot of color and the sound of frantic wings. Deidara, the renegade from the hidden stone, was airborne, his clay owl carrying him high over the settlement he'd just frozen in place. Gaara, the cage, was sprawled unconscious on the owl's back, a victim of the ultimate art. His sand shield had been obliterated by a minuscule explosion. True art is a blast, Deidara chuckled, his hands already rummaging through his clay pouches for another round. Before the rest of these desert rodents get up with me, I need to make my move. He halted. The air beneath him wasn't only stirred, it was forced aside. A vertical shockwave ripped through the desert's shimmering heat, its arrival punctuated by a sound reminiscent of a guillotine's finality. A colossal, ebony missile, bigger than a human, sliced through the air, just avoiding Deidara's owl's wing. The wind's pressure almost flipped the clay bird completely around. What the? Deidara said, his gaze snapping downward. The person, draped in a ragged black shroud, stood atop a vast sand dune, just beyond the village gates. Naruto Uzumaki held his hand out, the motion of his throw still echoing. The kunai remained unthrown. He'd hurled a real spear, fashioned from black iron, the remnants of his former slab. Hinata and Temari were already on the move, right beside him. Temari's fan was fully deployed, generating a powerful updraft that prevented Deidara from ascending. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. You're the one they call the artist, Naruto said, his voice barely above a whisper. His voice, a low rumble, cut through the desert winds, thick with a weighty, unsettling power. Naruto's hand shot back, fingers curling around the hilt of the true Dragon Slayer. He didn't take his time with the bandages. He ripped them off, the white linen drifting away, almost like a discarded husk. The black iron blade sang, its edge absorbing the sun's rays. And you're the Jinchuriki, Deidara said, his eyes sparkling with a wild, insane pleasure. The one they called the Black Swordsman. I heard you were a savage, but that throw, it was almost graceful, wasn't it? Naruto remarked, art is for those who have time to watch things burn. He didn't leap, he exploded. Fueled by a surge of the fox's crimson chakra and the mechanical power of his prosthetic arm, Naruto propelled himself upward, soaring 3 stories above. Deidara was in a frenzy, his hands a blur as he shaped more clay. Birds in flight. A flock of little, clay birds swooped down at Naruto. The flashes erupted in a stunning sequence. The sound of a sudden explosion. The sound echoed, a rhythmic pulse. Naruto was consumed by smoke and flames as he hung suspended. Deidara's lips curled into a smile as he anticipated the burned remains plummeting. The smoke did something unexpected. It split. Naruto appeared, the berserker armor taking form as a spiky, shadowy iron chest plate and gauntlets. He brought the Dragon Slayer's flat edge up to deflect the blast, the enormous sword soaking up the worst of the flames. Naruto, suspended in the air, brought the 400-pound sword down in a sweeping motion. The sheer force of the air pressure created a tangible, slicing edge of wind, cleaving right through Deidara's clay owl. "No way," Deidara screamed, vaulting off his crumbling perch, desperately grasping Gaara's lifeless form. The original text is empty. As Deidara plummeted, another being materialized from the canyon's depths. Sasori, concealed within his scorpion puppet Hirako, struck with a tail tipped in lethal venom. "You're making too much noise, Deidara," Sasori's voice, a mechanical rasp, cut through the air. "He's mine." The deadly appendage lashed out, aiming for Naruto's neck. The sound was sharp. Naruto stood his ground. His prosthetic hand snagged the tail. The black iron of the prosthetic hissed as the needle, its tip laced with poison, scraped against it. Yet, the metal held firm, refusing to give. Naruto's gaze fell onto the puppet, his eye a pale blue void. The brand on his neck pulsed, a deep violet light that throbbed in time with his heartbeat. "You're nothing but wood and dead strings," Naruto said, his voice suddenly taking on that chilling, machine-like quality. 2 years, I've been at it, putting the last touches on things that were already gone. You don't frighten me, marionette." Naruto tugged on the tail, dragging the cumbersome Hirako puppet closer. He lifted the dragon slayer, the other hand steady, and the Uzumaki seals on the hilt throbbed with a sinister, almost ravenous glow. Naruto's hand connected with the puppet's exterior, the impact reverberating through his arm. The force of the vibration, fueled by his struggler's will, splintered the thick timber as if it were nothing more than fragile glass. Sasori had no choice except to abandon his shell, exposing his genuine, youthful, wooden body. "I don't have any instructions or questions to answer, so I'm just going to rewrite the text." Temari and Hinata touched down on the ground beside Naruto. Hinata's Byakugan blazed, reaching its peak. Her hands crackled with the jagged, vibrating force of her iron palm technique. "Gaara's with the blonde," Hinata stated, her tone clipped. "His pulse is growing weaker. The extraction is underway." "Not a thing," Naruto said. He advanced, the dragon slayer's blade leaving a long, deep mark on the sand. The beast of darkness's purple aura coalesced, a ghostly wolf's head materializing among the shifting colors. "Return the cage," Naruto ordered, "or I'll transform this wasteland into a cemetery of shattered playthings and scorched earth." Sasori and Deidara observed the three, standing side by side. They'd arrived seeking a Jinchuriki, but what they discovered was something else entirely, a force of nature. "This isn't going to be a quick one, is it?" Deidara grumbled, wiping the sweat from his brow. "No," Sasori said, his finger threads quivering as he moved toward the scroll housing his third cage puppet. "The boy, he's the interstice, plain and simple. He's the link, the connector, straddling the worlds of the living and the departed." The battle for the sand had commenced, and the struggler was at the forefront. The desert's once searing, arid air now felt thick, laden with a metallic tang and the unmistakable scent of ozone. Sasori perched on a craggy spire of bone-white stone, his finger threads fluttering in the breeze. Next to him, the third cage puppet drifted, its wooden joints emitting a steady, almost eerie clicking sound. "You speak of killing things that are already dead, boy," Sasori's voice drifted from the confines of his wooden chest. "You don't grasp the situation. I've achieved a kind of immortality no one else has. And now, you'll be joining my collection." The puppet's lips, with a sound like old wood protesting, opened. A dense, black mass started to billow forth, a furious dance reminiscent of a swarm of agitated hornets. Iron sand. World order. The cloud, it turned out, wasn't just a cloud. It shattered into a multitude of sharp, three-dimensional spikes, cascading over the desert sands with the impact of 1,000 shooting stars. "Hinata, Temari, get out of the way," Naruto shouted. He didn't bother with that. He drove the true dragon slayer into the sand at his feet, fists clenched around the hilt. The 400-pound blade drew the iron sand to it, like a lightning rod. The sound echoed, a metallic clang. The sound echoed. The noise was a cacophony, 100 hammers striking an anvil all at once. The iron sand clashed with the dragon slayer's dark iron, yet the Uzumaki seals adorning the hilt flared with a brilliant, defensive violet. The sword wasn't merely a barrier, it actively pushed against the magnetic chakra. He's just using brute force against the Setetsu. Deidara mused, perched atop a newly crafted clay bird, watching from above. Impossible, right? The third sand is unbeatable. Then watch closely, artist, Tamari cried, her fan unfurling to its third crescent. Wind style. Sea dragon gale. A colossal wind tunnel surged towards Deidara, its purpose not to end his life, but to push him down. Hinata. Now. Hinata soared into the wind funnel, her feet skimming the ever-changing dunes below. She glided, a needle threading through silk. Deidara, mid-dive to escape Tamari's gust, suddenly found Hinata directly underneath him. Her hands weren't poised for a gentle fist. They were fists, trembling with a harsh, violet glow. Iron palm. Needle point vacuum. She punched the air. The blast surged upward, colliding with Deidara's clay bird and effectively disarming the explosive energy contained within. The bird didn't burst, it just disintegrated, scattering into nothing. My art. Deidara cried out, his voice a desperate wail as he plummeted, still holding onto the limp form of Gaara. On the battlefield, Sasori understood that the needles alone wouldn't suffice. The puppet's hands met with a sharp sound. The iron sand coalesced, taking the shape of a colossal, spinning pyramid. This was no ordinary structure, it was a weapon, engineered to obliterate whole strongholds. Perish within the shadow of the desert's might, Sasori ordered. The pyramid began its downward journey. Naruto's gaze lifted. The brand on his neck opened up, crimson seeping out and running down his artificial arm. The darkness inside him wasn't merely restless, it was practically screaming for the opportunity to shatter something so seemingly flawless. Give it to me. The berserker armor wasn't merely a suit, it was a force that took him over. The wolf helm closed, the sound of metal echoing in the quiet. Naruto appeared to swell, his shadow stretching and distorting until it resembled a vicious creature. He didn't raise the dragon slayer to defend himself. He raised it, ready to bring it down. He sprang upward, colliding with the descending iron sand pyramid. Slayer's stroke. World breaker. The black iron blade kissed the magnetic sand. Then, silence. A searing burst of violet and black light consumed everything. The impact was immediate. The iron sand pyramid didn't merely collapse, it was reduced to a fine powder. The magnetic chakra, the very thing keeping it intact, crumbled under the onslaught of the dragon slayer's unleashed, furious energy. He kept going. The blast's force gave him the push he needed, sending him hurtling into Sasori. I'm not sure what you mean. Can you give me more information? Sasori's eyes, the last vestige of his humanity, grew wide. The black-armored demon loomed above, a grim harbinger. A slab of iron was poised, ready to deliver the final blow. A soul, in a suit of iron, Sasori said, a peculiar, almost detached interest flickering in his eyes. Naruto's fist flew. The dragon slayer cleaved through the third cage puppet, reducing the once mighty relic to a shower of fragments and twisted metal. The weapon's trajectory was unerring, and it smashed into the stone column that had been Sasori's perch. The support gave way. As the echoes of the battle faded, Naruto found himself at the heart of the crater, his armor straining under the weight of the world. Sasori was sprawled out on the sand, just a few feet away. His wooden frame lay in pieces, limbs scattered. Yet, at the heart of his being, a tiny, cylindrical mechanism, his core, persisted, its delicate blue glow a constant, if dim, presence. You're a truly magnificent monster, Sasori managed, his voice trailing off. But the world, it doesn't have space for people like us, Naruto. The Akatsuki, they're not simply men. They're the harbingers of a new darkness. Naruto approached the center. He lifted the dragon slayer's blade. I'm the only eclipse this world needs, Naruto declared. He plunged the knife deep into the heart of it. The blue light sputtered, then extinguished itself. The eternal artist had departed. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the landscape. Tamari and Hinata had Deidara pinned down, a short distance away. The blonde bomber, witnessing Sasori's collapse, understood the operation had gone awry. This isn't over, you know. Deidara yelled, unleashing a dazzling explosion of light to cover his escape. The leader, He won't allow someone like you, a Jinchuriki, to just roam around. As the last vestiges of light slipped away, Deidara had vanished, abandoning Gaara to the desert floor. Naruto, the protective shell evaporating, leaving him panting in the desert's chill, approached the fallen cage. His gaze shifted from Gaara to Hinata, and finally to Temari. Is he breathing? Naruto's voice, once again, was a low, human rasp. Hinata knelt next Gaara, her palm resting on his chest. She nodded, the tension easing. His chakra flickered, hardly there. But the fight was far from finished. Naruto gazed into the distance. He sensed them, the other rings, a palpable presence. Other deities. Good, Naruto said, slinging the Dragon Slayer back across his shoulder. I'm just getting started. The gates of Sunagaku were a sea of faces, shinobi and townsfolk mingling, yet as Naruto drew near, the throng seemed to shift, creating a path for him. He didn't bear the cage. The Sans medical team had taken on that responsibility. Naruto, however, kept his distance, trailing 10 paces behind. The true Dragon Slayer was slung over his shoulder, its black iron blade marked by the dried oil of Sasori's puppets. He appeared less a figure of salvation and more a grim harbinger, freshly returned from a bountiful gleaning. Look at his eyes, Asuna Scout said, tugging his youngster into the protection of an alley's darkness. Those eyes don't belong to a child. They're the eyes of a man who's witnessed the world's collapse. Naruto simply ignored them. The brand's heat was fading from his neck, even as the skin beneath still throbbed with pain. The beast of darkness was still, its appetite temporarily sated by the puppet master's demise. Naruto understood, however, that this was a fleeting calm. I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill that request. Inside the Sans hospital, the atmosphere was antiseptic and frigid. Gaara rested on a bed of white linen, his breath a quiet, consistent rhythm. The evacuation had been halted, thankfully, but the emotional cost was staggering. Naruto gazed out at the sprawling desert from his vantage point by the window. A presence settled in, a gentle arrival. Not the brisk, sterile energy of the medical staff, but the familiar, calming aura of the person who had always been his anchor. He's going to be okay, Hinata murmured. She remained at his side, her hand still encased in the steel-threaded bandages. Her hand moved, fingertips brushing the worn leather of the Dragon Slayer's handle. You did it, Naruto. You finally broke the cycle. I didn't break anything, Hinata, Naruto said, his voice a low, metallic rasp. I managed to hold the shadows at bay, at least for now. The Akatsuki won't relent. Sasori was merely a finger, a small part of a much bigger scheme. Temari stepped into the room, her fan secured at her side. Naruto met her gaze, and she studied him with an expression that was hard to read, a blend of appreciation and something else, something more guarded. The council's in session, Temari announced. They're scared of you, plain and simple. Black Swordsman of the Leaf, is what they're whispering. They can't figure out if they should be honoring you or shipping you out before you decide to use that sword on the village itself. Naruto glanced over, his one pale blue eye locking onto hers. Keep your medals, I said. I didn't come here for thanks. The world is falling apart, and I'm the only one with a blade sharp enough to carve out the rot. As the sand mended, whispers of the event spread through the subterranean channels of the great nations. In the hidden cloud, the Raikage's fist met his desk with a resounding thud. He was reading a report about a boy with a slab of iron, who'd taken down 2 S-rank Akatsuki members. In the hidden stone village, Onoki studied the Dragon Slayer's depiction, his gaze sharpening as he did so. It was, however, in the land of rain, where the relentless deluge never ceased, that the news truly struck. Inside the tallest tower of Aim, Pain regarded the vacant chair that had previously belonged to Sasori. Konan stood quietly beside him. The Jinchuriki has changed, Pain intoned, his voice a chorus of 6 distinct presences. He is no longer a mere vessel. He's transformed, now a struggler. He dwells in the interstice, that liminal space between our reality and the void. Should we send Itachi? Konan inquired. No, Pain said, his Rinnegan pulsing in the shadows. The Uchiha has his own demons to confront. Let the world tremble before this Black Swordsman, for the time being. It'll only make the eventual reckoning all the more satisfying. The moon was up in Suna, its light spilling across the sands in a shimmering silver. Naruto perched atop the Cage Estate's roof, carefully polishing the Dragon Slayer with a soot-stained cloth. Hinata and Temari settled in beside him, flanking him on both sides. Under the vast, starry sky of the desert, they appeared a mismatched, fractured trio. "You're not seriously thinking of going back to Konoha, are you?" Temari inquired, her gaze fixed on the distant skyline. "The village is a cage, Temari," Naruto replied, his voice low. "Tsunade's a capable leader, no doubt. The problem is, she's got a council of elders breathing down her neck, intent on restraining the beast. I won't be shackled, not now." Hinata rested her head against his shoulder, fingers finding their way into the cool, artificial grip of his prosthetic. The chill of the iron didn't faze her. She understood the heat that simmered just below the surface. "Then we'll just have to stay hidden," Hinata said. "The world is vast, Naruto. And there are plenty of devils out there that need a good reminder of what iron can do." Naruto's gaze shifted between the two women, the wind and the iron. After years of feeling nothing except the relentless heat of his work and the consuming fire of the fox, the struggler had a new sensation. A small, flickering warmth blossomed in his chest. "The next one is in the land of lightning," Naruto announced, his eyes fixed on the northern horizon. "The two tails. They've got her. We're going after her." He straightened, the Dragon Slayer locking into place on his back. The road stretched before them, a grim tapestry woven of blood and darkness. Yet, for the first time, the Black Swordsman wasn't the only one traversing its treacherous course. The canyon, a graveyard of burnt soil and shattered rock, stretched before him. Amidst the devastation, Yugito Ni, the Jinchuriki of the two tails, was impaled on a rock face, held fast by jagged, obsidian spears. She was living, yes, but the very essence of her was being stripped away, flayed by the ritualistic energy radiating from the guy before her. Hidan, at the heart of his ritual, was a figure transformed. His flesh had become a stark contrast of bone black and white, and his face wore a skeletal mask, a visage of religious fervor. The spear, its point glinting, hovered above his chest, poised to end it all. "Lord Jashin, are you watching this?" Hidan bellowed, his voice swallowed by the storm. "A queen of cats, presented for your delectation. Savor her suffering, savor her." The sound was sharp. A dark object, roughly the mass of a human, crashed down in the middle of Hidan's ritual circle. The planet didn't simply fracture, it turned inside out. The blood-stained markings vanished, obliterated by a crater formed from the force of a sudden, violent impact. Hidan went down hard, his ritual shattered, the link to Yugito's heart cleaved by the force of the earth's upheaval. Who dares interrupt the sacrament?" Hidan screamed, his jaw clicking back into alignment with a sickening noise. The apparition emerged from the haze. Naruto didn't sprint. His steps were a deliberate, measured beat, the true Dragon Slayer balanced on his armored shoulder. Emerging from the fog, the outlines of two women appeared. One had purple eyes, and the other, a massive fan. They seemed like apparitions, ready to exact some kind of retribution. "You," Kakuzu said, his voice almost a whisper as he emerged from the darkness. His 5 faces, a swirling tempest, hissed with elemental rage. "The kid with the heavy metal. I told Hidan we should have taken your head when we had the opportunity." "You had your chance," Naruto said, his voice rough. His hand closed around the hilt of the Dragon Slayer. "Now, all that's left is a grave." Hidan sprang upright, the weight of his rebuilt, 3-bladed scythe pulling him down as he swung it. "I know you. You're the one with the blood that tastes like old metal. I'm going to etch a prayer into your skin." Hidan charged, a frenzied blur of cultist rage. The scythe sliced through the air, a broad, lethal sweep. Naruto did not parry. He moved into the strike. He grasped the scythe's main blade with his prosthetic iron arm. The metal screeched, sending sparks flying, but the prosthetic, made of the same interstice-tempered iron as his sword, didn't even dent. Naruto's solitary blue eye focused on Hidan. "My blood doesn't belong to you," Naruto stated. He activated the mechanism in his prosthesis. A concealed hatch opened, releasing a blast of concentrated, fire-style chakra, the prosthetic cannon, at point-blank range. Boom! Hidan's torso became a burnt cavity. He was hurled back, crashing into the canyon wall with a horrible thud, his body burning and damaged. Kakuzu did not wait. He realized this wasn't the lad from the borders anymore. Two of his masks sprang forward, one emitting a torrent of fire and the other a crushing wave of pressured wind. Searing migraine. Storm god's breath. Naruto, leave. Temari exclaimed. She swung her fan, her wind-style chakra producing a vacuum that drew the firestream higher into the sky. Hinata moved simultaneously. She went for the threads, not Kakuzu's body. Her hands were blurring, and her iron palm resonance vibrated at a frequency that broke the black chakra strands upon contact. You think you can dismantle me? Kakuzu shouted, causing his entire body to liquefy into black tendrils. Naruto shifted into a low stance. The brand on his neck started to bleed, and the dark blood mixed with the rain. The berserker armor appeared, and the wolf helm snapped shut with the sound of a tomb closing. Slayer's stroke. The abyssal cleave. Naruto swung the dragon slayer horizontally. He wasn't aiming for Kakuzu's physical heart, but for the link between the masks. Because the blade resided in the interstice, it severed the spiritual ties that bound Kakuzu's various lifetimes together. The black iron blade cut through both the fire and wind masks in a single sweep. The beings inside didn't simply perish. They vanished into the vacuum, their screams drowned out by the sword's hunger. Hidan, despite his burnt torso, approached his scythe. Lord Jashin. Give me the strength. Naruto approached him. The armored shadow loomed over the cultist, the crimson slits in the helm burning with a lightless fire. Your god is a lie told to children to make the dark feel less empty, Naruto's words reverberated, distorted by the armor. He did not use the blade's edge, he used the flat. He slammed the dragon slayer into Hidan's legs, the 400-pound weight smashing the bones into powder. You cannot die, the armored Naruto hissed, so you will spend eternity in the dark. Naruto directed his sight to the canyon floor. With a huge, earth-shattering strike, he created a fissure 50 feet deep. He kicked Hidan's wailing, broken body into the abyss. Temari, Naruto ordered. Temari understood. She swung her fan with all her might, toppling the canyon walls. Tons of rock and earth buried Hidan alive, sealing him in a tomb where no ceremony could ever be repeated. With only 2 hearts and his buddy buried, Kuzu knew the struggler had become an apex predator. He fled into the shadows, his threads drawing him into the mountain mist. He fled not out of fear, but for a cold, mercenary reason. This target was no longer profitable. Naruto's armor fell away, leaving him exposed to the freezing rain. He moved over to Yugito Ni and removed the black spears from her body. She sank into his arms, her breathing weak. Hinata's lavender eyes were filled with relief and concern as she stated, "We need to get her to a healer." "We're not going to a village," Naruto said, his voice returning to a human roughness. He stared to the horizon, where the lightning continued to dance. "The Akatsuki are gathering for the grand extraction. If we want to stop them, we have to find their lair. We have to go to the land of rain." Hinata and Temari remained by his side. They were covered in soot and blood, but their spirits were as strong as the iron Naruto carried. "The land of rain," Temari muttered, "the heart of the storm." "Good," Naruto murmured, lifting the true dragon slayer back onto his shoulder. "I've always liked the rain. It washes away the smell of the dead." The industrial heart of the hidden rain roared with the sound of grinding gears and rushing water. Naruto, Hinata, and Temari went through the lower pipes, their shadows dancing on the corroded steel. Naruto's brand was no longer sobbing, but shouting. The cold, regular throb at the base of his neck had transformed into a scorching heat that pulsed in time with the village's artificial heartbeat. "He knows we're here," Naruto said. He paused at the edge of a big ventilation shaft, gazing up at the spires that had vanished into the storm. "The rain, it's his chakra. Every drop that hits us is a report. Then we stop hiding," Temari replied, clutching the hilt of her fan. "If he wants a meeting, let's give him one that breaks his windows." Hinata's Byakugan blazed as she struggled to see through the village's strong chakra interference. "Naruto-kun, there are 6 of them. 6 distinct signatures, all connected by a single, terrifying frequency. And there's a woman, her chakra feels like paper drifting in the wind. They didn't have to find pain, it found them. A young woman with orange hair and icy, rippling eyes, known as the animal path, emerged from the shadows of a gigantic pipe array. She did not speak, she made a single hand sign. Summoning. Giant multi-headed bloodhound. A gigantic chimera beast with spiked collar emerged from a cloud of black smoke. It shouted, its 3 heads snapping at the air, and its eyes bore the same Rinnegan design as its master. Hinata, Temari, the summoner is yours. Naruto ordered. He did not draw his sword yet. He leapt at the beast, his prosthetic iron arm extending forward. He activated the grappling hook, and the spiked chain buried itself in the throat of the lead dog. He reeled himself in, his body transforming like a projectile. The hound bit Naruto's midsection, grinding its teeth against the hidden plates of the berserker armor. You're already dead, Naruto growled. He drew the true dragon slayer as a mid-air blur. Because the dog was a psychic creation, most blades would pass through or split it. However, the dragon slayer existed in the interstice. It severed the contract, not the flesh. The iron slab cut through all 3 heads simultaneously. The beast did not go up in smoke, instead, it melted into ash, its sole connection severed by the hunger of the black iron. During Naruto's summoning, Konan intercepted Hinata and Temari. Thousands of paper sheets swirled around them, creating razor-sharp wings that sliced through the metal pipes like silk. You seek a god, Konan said in a gentle, deadly whisper. But you are only dust. Dust has a way of getting in your eyes, Temari replied. Wind style. Dust storm scythe. Konan rebuilt her body into an origami cyclone as the wind blew the paper away. Hinata went into the center of the storm. She didn't utilize the gentle fist, but the iron palm, vacuum resonance. She smashed her palms together, generating a localized shockwave that caused the air to vibrate at a rate that prevented the paper from keeping its shape. Hinata replied, your wings are fragile, with cold violet eyes. In the shadow of the black swordsman, everything burns. Naruto landed on a high catwalk, with the dragon slayer resting on his shoulder. At the end of the bridge stood a man with orange hair and a face pierced with black rods. He stood frozen, as if he were the center of the universe. The Diva Path, you carry a heavy burden, Naruto Uzumaki, Pain stated. His speech was cool and free of any human inflection. The sword, the armor, the hate. You are a man who has walked through the eclipse and survived. But you do not understand true peace. Peace is just a word people use when they're too tired to fight, he said. He took a step forward, the catwalk groaning beneath his weight. You're not a god, you're just a puppet master hiding behind a wall of corpses. Pain lifted his hand, Shinra Tensei. The unseen wall of force struck Naruto like a mountain. He was launched backward, the metal catwalk twisting and cracking like wire. However, Naruto remained upright. He pushed the dragon slayer into the side of a building, the black iron digging into the stone and steel, anchoring him against gravity. The brand on his neck emitted a bright violet glow. The berserker armor did not simply appear, it yelled. The wolf helm slammed shut, transforming Naruto's silhouette into a jagged, flickering shadow against the rain. If you are a god, the armored Naruto shouted, his voice like a chorus of suffering souls. Then I am the one who kill gods. Naruto jumped from the wall with the dragon slayer raised high. He used spite instead of chakra. He swung. The blade confronted the second, Shinra Tensei, head-on. The shockwave broke every window in the district, but the dragon slayer refused to stop. It cut through gravity itself, with the blade's edge millimeters from Pain's throat. Pain's rippling eyes expanded. For the first time in years, the god of rain felt a chill of actual, mortal fear. The bridge was gone. Naruto and Pain stood on the wreckage of a collapsed tower, while the rain became torrential. Your pain is great, Suffering muttered, blood streaming from his nostrils as he stabilized his connection with the other roots. But it is not universal. We will meet again, Jinchuriki. When the world is ready to bleed with you. Pain dissipated into a torrent of rain, and other roads followed. Naruto stood among the ruins, his armor fading and leaving him gasping for air. His body was covered with fresh bruises, and the dragon slayer seemed heavier than it had before. Hinata and Temari fell beside him, their garments ripped but their spirits strong. "He's testing us," Temari murmured, gazing at the tower. "He's not testing us," Naruto said, his voice returning to a human roughness. He gazed at the dragon slayer. The blade was humming in a quiet, contented tone. "He's afraid." He felt the iron. And now, he knows that even a god can bleed. Naruto looked toward the village center. The struggle was no longer simply about survival. It was about tearing down the heavens. "Let's move," Naruto said. "The night is just beginning." The topmost tower of the hidden rain was a hollowed-out memorial to morning. Naruto, Hinata, and Temari climbed the central spire, their boots clanking on the worn industrial stairs. Hinata murmured, "The chakra is coming from the very top," as her Byakugan strained to the limit. The veins surrounding her temples throbbed, and her lavender eyes traced the millions of chakra-conductive cables that ran across the walls. "It's not 6 people anymore. It's one heart, beating for all of them." "A spider in a web of its own making," Naruto rasped. He grabbed the true dragon slayer's hilt. The brand on his neck was no longer merely weeping. It was a white-hot coal, indicating the presence of something beyond human comprehension. The last barrier was a wall of millions of paper sheets. Konan stood there, her body partially dissolved into origami. Her expression conveyed a profound, pained devotion rather than malice. "He is in communion," Konan remarked with a subtle rustling. "No one enters the sanctuary of God." Temari responded, "Your god is a corpse in a chair," her fan cracking open. Wind style. Great Taskmaster's gale. Despite the wind, Konan's sheets contained oil and explosive tags, preventing them from being scattered. She spun into a cyclone, pinning Temari and Hinata to the wall. Hinata yelled, "Go, Naruto!" as her iron palm radiated energy. She smashed her palms against the air, causing a reverberation that shattered the paper shroud around them. "Find the source. We'll hold the wings." Naruto did not glance back. He drew the dragon slayer, the black iron blade cutting through the sheath with a scream that drowned out the storm. He swung the huge weapon once, and the sheer air pressure carved a path through the paper storm. He kicked open the last door. The chamber was dark and smelled like ozone and old blood. In the center was a mechanical throne, a scary device made of black rods and life support tubes. A man sitting in the center appeared to be a ghost. Nagato was malnourished, his skin stretched thin over his ribs, and his red Uzumaki hair had turned white from the strain of the Rinnegan. He was connected to the tower via dozens of black receivers, making him a physical component of the machine. The head of the Diva Path sat beside him, with cold and vacant eyes. "So," Nagato's voice was a dry, rattling whisper that came from the speakers in the walls. "The Jinchuriki who carries the dragon's iron. You have come to see the man behind the curtain." "I've come to put a stop to the theater," Naruto remarked. He did not take a stance. He approached Nagato, the dragon slayer gouging a groove in the metal floor. "You talk about pain, but you've turned it into a religion. You've spent so long looking at the world through a puppet's eyes that you've forgotten what it feels like to bleed." "Bleeding is the only thing that's real," Nagato responded. He lifted a trembling hand. "If the world will not listen to reason, it must listen to the scream of the heavens." Gedo Mazo. The floor of the tower erupted. The demonic statue of the outer path, a gigantic, multi-eyed creature, projected its upper torso through the floors. It roared, shattering the glass in the spire and unleashing a swarm of purple, soul-stealing dragons. Naruto screamed, "Give me the armor." The berserker armor exploded, rather than simply manifesting. The shadow iron enveloped his torso in a jagged, lupine outline. The wolf helm snapped shut, and the crimson eye slits burned with a lightless flame. Naruto flung himself at Gedo Mazo. The purple dragons attacked, aiming to pull the soul from the body. But Naruto was more than just a soul, he was a struggler. He swung the dragon slayer, the black iron absorbing the dragon's spiritual essence. Because the blade was fashioned in the interstice, it destroyed the statue's link rather than simply cutting the chakra. Slayer's stroke. The Eclipse Breaker. Naruto slammed the dragon slayer's flat into Gedo Mazo's head. The collision was so strong that the entire tower tilted 5 degrees. The statue groaned, its stone-like skin splitting with the weight of the heap of iron. Naruto landed in front of Nagato, his armor groaning as the beast of darkness fought for full control. He hoisted the Dragon Slayer above his head. "Wait," Nagato said quietly. He glanced at Naruto, not at his armor, but at the single, lightless blue eye that was visible through the helm. "I see them, the ghosts behind you. They aren't ninjas. They are an army of those who refused to die." Nagato coughed, spewing blood across his mechanical throne. "You and I, we are both Uzumaki. We were both meant to be the containers for the world's hate. But you don't contain it. You use it as a whetstone." Naruto paused, his blade wavering. The armor's impact has faded just enough for him to speak. Naruto rasped, "My hate doesn't belong to the village, or the world," his voice reverberating from the helm. "It belongs to the struggle. If you want peace, Nagato, then find it in the quiet. I'm done listening to the noise of a god." Naruto did not swing for the neck. He pushed the Dragon Slayer into the mechanical throne, destroying the life support systems and black rod conductors. The link was terminated. Nagato fell forward, gasping for air as the Rinnegan's drain stopped. The 6 paths of pain across the village had fallen into heaps of meat and metal. Nagato looked up, his vision fading. "The cycle. It doesn't end with me. The man with the mask. Tobi. He is the one who holds the true eclipse. Beware the moon, Naruto Uzumaki. It is not a light, it is an eye." The master of the Rinnegan took a final, rattling breath and went silent. Konan entered the room with her paper wings slipping away. She did not attack. She approached Nagato and wrapped his body in a veil of white origami. "The god is dead," she murmured, gazing at Naruto with a frightening impartiality. "But the bridge remains. You've broken the rain's heart, Black Swordsman. What will you do with the pieces?" Naruto lifted the Dragon Slayer over his shoulder. He stared at Hinata and Temari, who stood in the doorway, damaged but still alive. "I'm not a builder," Naruto stated. "I'm just the one who clears the ground." He strolled out onto the balcony and gazed over the land of rain. For the first time in years, the clouds parted. A solitary beam of light struck the black iron of his blade. "The Great War is coming," Naruto stated. "And the moon is looking for a sacrifice. Let's go meet it." The 5 Kage sat at a round table, their guardians standing like statues behind them. Mifune, the samurai general, sat in the center and served as the mediator. "The Akatsuki have taken 7 of the 9-tailed beasts," the Raikage yelled, his fist breaking the table. "And while we bicker, the Black Swordsman has turned the land of rain into a graveyard." "Who is this boy? A leaf rogue? A sand mercenary?" Danzo Shimura, the interim 6th Hokage, narrowed his one visible eye. "Naruto Uzumaki is a failure of the previous administration. He is a weapon that has lost its hilt. He carries a power that belongs to the leaf, and he must be retrieved, by any means necessary." Gaara, the Kage, gave Danzo a hard, merciless stare. "Naruto Uzumaki saved my life when the leaf sat behind its walls. He is not a weapon. He is the only man who has looked at the god of the rain and made him bleed." Before the debate could develop, the summit chamber's great stone doors began to creak. The iron hinges shrieked as they were pushed inward, not by a jutsu, but by sheer, horrifying force. The doors were torn off their rails, rather than just opening. Naruto walked into the chamber. He was covered in snow and dried blood. The true Dragon Slayer was unlatched, the point of the black iron blade sliding across the floor, carving a deep, permanent groove into the precious stone. Hinata and Temari trailed behind him, their lethal gaze searching the room, prompting the cage's guards to draw their guns. "Sit down," Naruto commanded. His voice had a weight that appeared to bodily draw the air out of the room. "The adults are talking. You dare." The Raikage's guards, C and Darui, charged forward. Naruto did not even look at them. He swung the Dragon Slayer in a lightning-fast horizontal arc, creating a wall of air rather than killing. The resultant shockwave caused both elite Jonin to fall back into the pillars. "I didn't come here to play ninja," Naruto murmured, his single blue eye fixated on Danzo. "I came to tell you that the moon is turning red, and your little system is about to be ground into the dirt. Suddenly, a distortion developed in the center of the table. A figure wearing a spiral orange mask came from the nothingness and sat calmly on the stone surface. Well, Toby muttered, his voice both amusing and terrifying. The struggler has finally arrived at the table of the kings. How fitting. The Akatsuki, Onoki, the Tsuchikage, grimaced. State your business, ghost. My business is simple, Toby explained, his Sharingan eye shining through the mask. I am here to announce the project Tsuki no Mi, the Eye of the Moon. I will cast a genjutsu over the entire world, creating a dream where there is no pain, no war, and no struggle. Toby turned to face Naruto. But for that, I need the final two pieces. I need the 8 tails, and I need the beast inside the black swordsman. You're not getting a drop of my blood, Naruto growled, strengthening his grip on the hilt of his blade. The brand on his neck began to pulse with a lightless, violet energy. Then I declare it, Toby stated in a deep, ancient tone. The fourth great ninja war. The world against the Akatsuki. And against the one who refuses to dream. Toby went into the void, leaving just silence. A world war, the Mizukage, Materumi, muttered. Against a man who can phase through reality. We need a shinobi alliance, the Raikage stated, getting up. And the first thing we do is secure the remaining Jinchuriki. Naruto Uzumaki, you are coming into custody. Naruto gave a low, dry laugh that sounded like iron on bone. He placed the Dragon Slayer over his shoulders. I don't serve your alliance, Naruto stated. And I don't serve the dream. I am the struggler. If you want to stop the war, stay out of my way. If you try to cage me, I'll treat you the same way I treated the god of the rain. Naruto turned to leave, but paused to glance at Gaara. The sand is the only village I owe. Keep your people safe, Kazekage. The night is going to be long. As Naruto, Hinata, and Temari went out into the blizzard, Danzo's expression was one of controlled wrath. He is too dangerous to be left alive. If the Akatsuki doesn't kill him, we must. Snow fell heavily outside the stronghold, creating a white ash effect. Naruto glanced at the Dragon Slayer, the black iron reflecting the dim, cloudy moonlight. It's starting, Hinata remarked, her purple eyes tracing the flow of chakra across the mountain range. The world is gathering its armies. Let them gather, Naruto instructed. He felt the beast of darkness within him snarl, eager for the impending murder. An army is just a target. We're going to find the 8 tails before Toby does. We're going to the land of lightning. Temari closed her fan. Then let's get moving. I have a feeling the Raikage isn't going to make this easy. In the midst of the world's greatest war, the black swordsman vanished into obscurity. The island's air was thick with humidity and the aroma of primordial moss. Naruto climbed off the transport vehicle, his true Dragon Slayer making a huge metallic clang against the giant turtle's shell. Hinata and Temari stood behind him, cautiously surveying the deep jungle. The chakra here is strange, Hinata muttered, her Byakugan activated. It's as if the island itself is breathing. And ahead, there's a signature that feels like a sun trapped in a cage. That's him, Naruto muttered. He adjusted the leather strap on his prosthetic arm. The 8 tails, the only one left who hasn't been broken. Killer Bee was seen dancing in a clearing near the Falls of Truth. He moved with a weird, rhythmic smoothness, 7 swords nestled into various joints on his body and whirling like a lethal top. Yo, who's the cat with the giant bat? Coming to my island, looking all flat. A Jinchuriki brother, I see, but you smell like iron and misery. B came to a halt, pointing his 7 blades toward Naruto in an intricate web of steel. He stared at the Dragon Slayer, then at Naruto's lightless blue eye. 7 blades against one hunk of junk. B smiled, his sunglasses reflecting the faint light of the woods. You're outclassed, kid. My rhythm is too funky for a monk. Naruto stated, I'm not a monk, as he moved his hand to the hilt over his shoulder. And this isn't a toy. It's a grave marker. I'm here because the moon is turning red, and you're the only one who can teach me how to keep the fox from eating my soul when I use the armor. B did not respond with words. He lunged. The conflict was a cacophony of sounds. B's seven-sword technique was unpredictable, a frantic dance of angles and stabs that should have been impossible to follow. However, Naruto did not attempt to track the blades. He employed his true Dragon Slayer as a kinetic shield. Clang 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 clang, Naruto wielded the 400-pound blade in a wide round sweep. B flipped over the iron, his blades brushing Naruto's prosthetic arm, but Naruto did not react. He fired the prosthetic cannon point blank. B turned in midair, shielding himself from the blast with an eight-tails tentacle. He landed effortlessly, his grin widening. B rapped, "Strong arms, long charms, but you're full of alarms." His tone became more serious. "You got a beast inside, yeah, the nine-tails fox, but there's something else in there. Something that shocks. It smells like a dog made of shadow and bone. You're walking a path that you shouldn't walk alone." B guided them to the base of the big waterfall. The water did not fall. Rather, it crashed like thunder. "This is the Falls of Truth," B explained, pointing to the sparkling pool. "You want to master the fox. You got to face the you that you hate the most. If you lose, the beast takes the wheel. If you win, you find the seal." Naruto sat before the water. He closes his eyes. Hinata moved forward, resting her hand on his shoulder. "I'll stay right here, Naruto-kun. If the shadow gets too dark, look for the light of the gentle fist." Naruto entered his mindscape. However, he did not find the fox's crimson cage. He discovered a landscape of white ash and a sky composed of eyes. Standing across from him was his reflection, but it was not the Naruto from the academy. Dark Naruto appeared, dressed in full berserker armor and wearing a twisted mask of trauma. "You think you're the hero?" Dark Naruto laughed, imitating the voices of those who had injured him. "You're just a vessel for guts, leftovers. You're a child playing with a dead man's spite. Why bother saving a world that only ever gave you a cage?" "Because the cage is where I learned to sharpen the iron," Naruto said calmly. In the real world, Naruto's neck brand turned a dazzling violet color. The water at the falls became black. Naruto did not confront his evil reflection with a sword. He approached the armored phantom and placed his hand on the wolf helm. "I don't hate you," Naruto muttered. "You're the part of me that survived. You're the iron in my blood. But the struggle isn't about the hate. It's about the endurance." The dark mirror shuddered, causing the berserker armor to crumble. Naruto found himself standing in front of the Nine-Tails' huge golden gate. The fox looked down, its nine tails swishing through the black water. "So," Kurama murmured, more courteous than ever before. "You've finally learned to house the shadow. Are you ready to open the gate, little struggler?" "Not yet," Naruto said. "We're going to use the shadow to reinforce the gate. We're going to be the iron that the moon can't break." Naruto opened his eyes to the tangible world. He was soaked in sweat, but the aura around him had shifted. The purple energy of the berserker armor was now intertwined with flickering strands of golden Nine-Tails chakra. It wasn't the Kyuubi mode that everyone was familiar with. It was something fresh, Interstus mode. "Whoa, the glow up is real, and the feel is ideal," B said, banging fists with Naruto. "You didn't just tame the cat, you built a new habitat." Tamari gazed at Naruto, her eyes wide. "The pressure, it's different. It's not just scary anymore. It's solid." Naruto stood up and raised the Dragon Slayer. He stared out at the ocean. He could feel it. The Akatsuki's White Zetsu army was organizing. The war was no longer imminent. It was here. Naruto said, "Let's go. We have an army to dismantle." Stay tuned for more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.